Hit it, boys.
Happy Thursday, HTF Bets fanatics and Okelo holics across the world. Welcome to our HTF Bets fantasy special, where the three amigos, yours truly, Okelo Pena, Robert Husby, and Nick Geddes, are ready to dive into the most wonderful time of the year. And I ain't talking about Christmas. It's football season at last. We finally get to sink our teeth into some gridiron action. And man, I'm just excited as more or less for tonight as anybody, but I don't want to spoil it for anybody, but I want to get my two other my co-hosts with me. So Robert, how you feeling about Thursday night tonight? I mean, finally, we've waited since February for this, man. How you feeling? 7 long months we get football.
Yeah, it's gone by super fast or super slow, depending on who you ask. But it's definitely been a weird lead up to the season because of just been straight training camp. So it's definitely been really weird. But I'm excited. Like, it just kind of like snuck up. Like, in the midst of the NBA playoffs and all of a sudden we have football coming up, and then college is starting pretty soon too. So I'm very excited. It definitely is a welcoming feeling to have football back.
Nick, it's been one of the most curious and as well as intriguing off seasons. There's been so many moves made, but we didn't really get to see much of any rookies or really any football action. Again, as Robert mentioned, there was no preseason games due to COVID. But how are you feeling? I mean, this has got to be, if not one of the most interesting and exciting seasons in the NFL in a long, long time.
Well, for me personally, it's like Christmas morning. There's nothing better than waking up in the morning and knowing that we are starting the NFL football season. And I'm ready for the madness. We have the NFL starting, like you said, we have NBA, NHL, MLB, college football. We're going to have all this going on at once. I'm ready for it. I can't wait to just be watching all of it, especially my football. I am so ready for football to be here, and we've reached a point where it's here tonight, and what a great matchup to kick it off.
Guys, I can feel the energy coming across the wave, even though we may be in different places in different parts of the city or as well as the state of Florida. The energy, I can just feel it, and I'm so excited. But speaking of football, we do get at least one game tonight, and it's at least the long-awaited season opener, the AFC divisional playoff matchup between the Kansas City Chiefs and the Houston Texans from last year's interesting postseason bonanza. Let's just take a look quick at the bet lines for this game. I mean, the Chiefs are coming in as a 9.5-point favorite, and the over and under is going to be at least 53.5. The money line, of course, is expected to be minus 440 for the Chiefs, plus 34 for the Texans. And just some quick hitters for each and every one of you. The Chiefs are 11-0 in games played in the month of September. They finished 9-0 for the season. For the end of the season, including the postseason, and the Texans are 1-4 in the last week 1 game. So there are a lot of storylines outside of this just being the playoff matchup. I mean, potentially the future Brady and Manning as well of this league being that of Mahomes versus Watson. Nick, I want to start with you going into tonight's game between the Chiefs and the Texans. How are we feeling going in? I mean, are we looking at this being a Kansas City blowout? Are we looking at this being a close-knitted tight game? What could we expect? There's going to be no noise in Arrowhead Stadium, so how does that imply as well with how this is going to go down?
I think it's a big break for Houston to not have to deal with all the decibels that Chiefs fans would usually cause a team to struggle with. And I'm very anxious to see. I think this is almost a new era of Texans football almost. And I know it's because DeAndre Hopkins, is not there anymore, but it just feels like it's a new era because he's really not there. And we're going to really see how Deshaun Watson reacts. We got a number one receiver. They brought in Brandon Cooks to try to fill that void. He's coming off a down year, but he's going to be the number one option. And they're going to be praying that Will Fuller can stay healthy, and as well David Johnson, who they got back in the trade for DeAndre Hopkins. I'm very anxious that the Texans are going to come out. For the Chiefs, to me, it's business as usual. This is a team that didn't really make many acquisitions. Clyde Edwards-Helaire obviously would be the biggest acquisition through the draft, and they finally have a proven running back to put next to Mahomes after the Kareem Hunt debacle a couple years ago. So I think it's just full sail ahead for the Chiefs, and I expect them to come out as well tonight and going. And I think if they're pumping crowd noise, I think that's still gonna be giving that atmosphere to the Chiefs as well and something for them to build off of.
Business as usual, you say, Nick. But Robert, I want to hear your take of things. This is a kind of a new era of Texans football. I mean, with all the moves that the new head coach slash GM Bill O'Brien made, are we feeling confident maybe that the Texans can at least turn around their week one? I don't want to say messes, but their week one losses and hopefully turn this one into a W.
I don't know. It's going to be tough for them. Nick put out a lot of good points. I think the Chiefs really didn't lose a whole lot. Obviously, Patrick Mahomes gets signed long term. This is a team that is coming right off, and they're just as dangerous as they were back in February. Patrick Mahomes is a game changer. Travis Kelce's a game changer. Now, Clyde Edwards-Helaire is probably going to step up. So, I think the Chiefs are the favorite for a good reason. They're athletes, yes. Like you said, Okelo, a lot of not going to be any fans at Arrowhead, so it's not going to be that intimidating, home stadium for the Chiefs as it's been in years past. But this Chiefs team is still stacked, and it's a great team. And they're coming in again as Super Bowl favorites, and for good reason. On the Texans side of the football, like you said, there's a lot of injury concerns here. Brandon Cooks with the Rams dealt with a lot of concussion issues. Is that going to fix itself? Probably not. They're going to have to try and hope that he can stay healthy this year. Same thing with Will Fuller, same thing with David Johnson. Those are guys that are not consistently healthy enough for Deshaun Watson to be able to rely on. And with Deshaun Watson getting this brand new huge contract, you can't have him doing it by himself. You need these guys to help him. You need them to stay healthy. You need them to perform on a consistent basis. And that's even more so that DeAndre Hopkins is in Arizona long term. You lose your number one option, arguably one of the best wide receivers. It's a huge loss. There's going to be a lot of ground to make up for it. So, for Bill O'Brien, this is a make or break here. Already a lot of Texans fans are getting fed up with him. This is it. He's on the hot seat. If they miss the playoffs this year, I would not be shocked. It's a make or break season for the Texans.
It is a make or break season. After all, I mean, he's been given this power after a couple of interesting shifts in the offseason for the Texans, not only for this season, but also the past couple of seasons. So many storylines, so many question marks till we get in. But one of the biggest things that I've looked at least in my perspective, is more or less, I mean, you get the Texans defense a little bit better healthy. I mean, J.J. Watt is not going to have to deal with an injury, number one, to play in this game. And I think even as you mentioned, Robert, for Deshaun Watson, I mean, he's getting paid now one of the richest contracts for a quarterback right now, only behind, of course, his opponent for Thursday night. But one of my biggest things is for the Texans is, can they continue to make sure Deshaun Watson stays in the pocket? I mean, this is a quarterback who over the past two seasons have been not only one of the most pressured in terms of QB sacks, but also he's been hit a lot. He's been dealing with a lot. He's been taking a lot of hits. So I have to say this, with as good as the Chiefs defense is, can the Texans O-line be able to protect them? And I think that's something that we got to look forward to in Thursday. We're going to get to the fantasy points in just a minute, but I mean, I've seen a lot of crazy scores going into this game. Robert, how are we seeing Texans Chiefs play out in week one?
Oh, man. I don't think it's going to be a blowout. I think it's going to be fairly close for a good while. This Texans team, they do have the talent to, keep the Chiefs, not necessarily at bay, but to keep it close. And I think, week one, there's a lot of doubts. Again, no preseason, all been great. So in a week like this, especially opening week, it's going to be very interesting to see what teams come in hot, come in cold, because this is really the one week where you can get a team like the Chiefs off the game because they have not had any simulation games. So could the Texans beat them? Sure. Do I think it's going to be a blowout? No. But I think the Chiefs are going to win this game. If I had to guess the spread, I think it would be, at least a two-touchdown game for the Chiefs. I think, again, not a blowout. I think it'll be close for a good while, but I fully
Nick, how are you feeling about the spread as well as just how this game is going to turn out? Is this going to be the Week 7 game that we saw, or is this going to be the whole turnaround maybe of the AFC playoffs? Do you think maybe the Texans could potentially pull off the upset?
Well, the over-under right now is 53.5 points, and I think they're going to blast right through that. These are two very high-powered offenses, and I think it's going to be a shootout. Right now, I have it Chiefs 38 and Texans 27, and I think a really big thing here is that both of these teams do not come in with strong cornerback groups. The weaknesses of both these defenses is the secondary, and specifically the cornerbacks. And I'm looking at Tyreek Hill. He's going to be going up against either Bradley Roby, Vernon Hargraves, or Garay Conley. And none of those guys are going to stop Tyreek Hill. And so I think he's going to have a really big game tonight. He's really going to stretch the field. And on the other side, it's going to be Charvarius Ward versus Will Fuller, most likely. And Will Fuller likes to get long, likes to get stretched. So I think Watson and Mahomes are going to have big opportunities to hit the guys down the field early, make an impact, and I think it's going to last throughout the game. And then, of course, on the Chiefs side, I think the biggest X factor is Travis Kelce. He's virtually unstoppable as a route runner, as a tight end. There's no linebacker in this league is going to cover Travis Kelce, and certainly nobody in the linebacking core of the Texans is going to cover Travis Kelce. So I expect him to get his, and I think the Chiefs are going to pull it out 38-27.
38-27. I had a moderate score prediction. I mean, I think as we all can agree, it's going to be a shootout. It's going to be a blast. I mean, both these defenses do have their flaws. I mean, Nick, you mentioned it perfectly. I mean, the Texans, they lose their longtime corner, Jonathan Joseph. So, like you said, Bradley Roby, Vernon Hargraves to cover Tyreek Hill, or even just as well as the other threats of McCole Hardman as well. I mean, there's just so much speed and competition on both sides that it's going to be a true I want to say treat for anybody that loves offenses, and not so much if you're a defense. So, Robert, I guess before we get into the fantasy perspective, what's your score prediction for tonight's game?
I think Nick's right on the money. 38-27 is a good indication.
All right.
I know I'm being boring here, but I do think that's a fair prediction. These defenses can, really, especially again without the preseason, they're really going to struggle to keep that score contained, and they're going to, it is going to be a highly offensive. Listen, to open the season on Thursday night, that's what you kind of want. You want a fun game. You don't want a game that low scoring. You want a high scoring. So yeah, 38-27 is what I would give or take.
I know. I mean, let's not get a Snoresville that the Packers and Bears were last year. I mean, that one put me straight to bed, and I didn't even need to, have NyQuil to add into it. But I mean, other than the fact of just the overall game, we play this as well for fantasy. So let's dive in right into the fantasy. So obviously, you have your starters, of course, Mahomes, Watson. Let's talk about maybe some guys that you are on the cusp of sitting. Nick, I want to start with you. I mean, going into this game, there are so many variables. Is there really anybody that you think you should see that should be on your bench in this week 1 matchup? Or do you think it's like, hey, go all in, go all out, and play as many of these guys as you can?
I think on the Chiefs side, I'm pretty confident starting Mahomes, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Tyreek Hill, Travis Kelce. I think Sammy Watkins has some slight flex appeal. And the same thing with Mecole Hardman in deeper leagues. Just because of their ability to stretch the field, and Mahomes is definitely going to be airing it out a lot, I believe. For the Texans, I think Will Fuller, forbid he makes it through this game healthy, because that's a big thing for Will Fuller. I think he has great wide receiver 2 upside in this game if he fulfills his potential here. I'm interested to see David Johnson, but I think this is going to be a shootout. I think the Chiefs are going to be ahead early, so David Johnson, I think, is no better than a flex play this week, because I think the Texans are going to be throwing it a lot, and Deshaun Watson, I think, is going to be racking up a lot of fantasy points as a result.
No, absolutely. I really do think that Mahomes and Watson, by all said and done, they could end up together 1 and 2 in terms of fantasy points for quarterbacks this week. But then again, we can definitely talk about that later on as things to come. Robert, how are you feeling? I feel like this is a game where you're if you can find anybody on the Chiefs or Texans, like with the exception of their defenses, it's going to be a blast for you and a good head start going into your week.
Yeah, this is going to be a game where you're going to get a lot of points, like Nick said. Just because of the potential of an offensive shootout here, you are going to get a lot of guys like Kelce. You're going to get a lot of points from a guy like Mahomes and Watson. It's inevitable. it is obviously there's intangibles. Players get hurt, players don't perform as well as they should. But in a game like this, I think if everything goes according to plan, you're going to rack up a lot of points if you have any offensive starters or any of the Texans offensive starters. I agree with the David Johnson, point, the one that's the odd man out with the Texans. Most of those guys like Fuller, you know, and, and even Brandon Cooks and stuff like that, those guys are going to be for a lot of people, Mahomes is their QB1. So the chance to rack up a lot of points in this opening weekend. And I think that's going to happen because it is going to be such an awesome game.
Yeah, no question. I mean, Deshaun Watson last year put up astronomical numbers, and I ain't talking Travis Scott for what he did in week 1 of the regular season. So I look forward to the competition and to be able to do it. Real quick before we end off this segment, give me, Robert and Nick, I'll ask you next. Give me one sleeper from this game that you feel that you can maybe grab off the waiver wire, or maybe you have that you can plug in and play, and to maybe lead you a little bit to some fantasy win, not only a win, but also help you in the early going of this week.
You know what? I'm gonna go with Clyde Edwards. I don't know where he sits on a lot. I think a lot of people in their drafts have picked in the rounds. I don't think he hit the waiver wire. I don't think he'd be a free agent in that situation. But just because he is a rookie and there is a lot of unknowns with him, there is a lot of expectation for him, especially in the Chiefs offense. And the willingness from Andy Reid and the Chiefs offense to run him. I think he is one that is right now not a guarantee like some of the other guys. Obviously, you're not going to be able to pick up a guy like Mahomes. You're not going to be able to pick up a guy like Kelsey or Brandon Cook, even David Johnson, Will Fuller. You're not going to be able to pick up guys on waivers for the most part. Most of those guys are really flex off, or they're going to be starting. And I think for Hilaire, it depends on where people see him. He is seen as a backup running back. He's either there or he is going to hit waivers because you think there's somebody that is more guaranteed there. I would say that he's probably the if he does hit waivers that high. But just with how good these offenses are, I just these guys hit. So he would be my guess.
No, I absolutely see that. Nick, I mean, Robert mentioned some great points. Do you see maybe any super duper sleeper maybe coming out from the Chiefs? Maybe you plug in a McCole Hardman. Maybe you do let Sammy Watkins come in as a flex if you're in a deep lead. Anybody that you see maybe who could maybe give you a good head start?
In deep leagues only from the Texans' point of view, I think Randall Cobb could have some sneaky appeal, only because he offers you something a little bit more different than Will Fuller, Cooks, and Stills. They're more of deep threats guys, but Randall Cobb relies a lot on his route running, a lot of underneath, and I think he could end up being a safety valve throughout the season for Deshaun Watson down low. And I think that tonight it could play a really big dividends if he can find Randall Cobb on a lot of seam routes and stuff like that over the middle of the field.
Oh, no question. I'm going to do you one better, guys. I've looked at one player who's been a good security blanket for Deshaun Watson, and it feels like he stole a lot of fantasy points last season, whether you had Will Fuller or you had DeAndre Hopkins. I'm going to go with Darren Fells as a deep sleeper this week. I think, he's going to be very crucial for Deshaun Watson. I mean, in terms of red zone targets, as well as maybe deep down the field within Chiefs territory. I look for Darren Fells to be a guy that if you desperately need a tight end going into this week, and I'll get to my starts and sits in the next segment, but hopefully we're going to see Darren Fells at least have a good night. I'm going to say that he gets you around 13 fantasy points. I mean, a couple catches, maybe 40, 70 yards, and at least a touchdown, just because, right when Deshaun Watson needs a red zone target, he's been the absolute favorite, so I'm going to go for him. And to end off our segment into tonight, we talked about our score predictions. We all have the Chiefs going in. We at least said 9-point favorites. I'm going to say that it's going to be a close battle, a field goal game, 34-31. But to end off this segment, Nick, who winds up being, out of any of the Texans and Chiefs players, the main fantasy superstar for Thursday night?
It's got to be Patrick Mahomes. He's quarterback one. He's NFL player number one as far as I'm concerned. He's going to be the guy that leads the Chiefs to victory tonight, and I think that's not surprising to anybody.
No problem. Robert, who are you picking as the overall fantasy MVP, at least for this game?
Yeah, as much as I'd like to be different, it's gotta be Patrick Mahomes. You know, he's obviously arguably the best quarterback. This is a guy who is so dominant, can take control of it very well. You know, I would like to say John Watson. I'd like to even say somebody like Travis Kelce, but I think safe bet for Mahomes, and he can be the MVP.
No problem. I mean, Mahomes is the counter, but I'm going to do you guys one better once again. And I'm going to say, and I don't mean to put a little history in this, but we all know what Kareem Hunt did in his very first game in the season. Now, I look for both Damian Williams and Clyde Edwards-Helaire to be the fantasy showstoppers in this game. But I'm going to say Clyde Edwards-Helaire rounds up having the best game. I mean, the Texans, after all, did give up last year the 7th most fantasy points to running backs. And I think that this is going to be the type of game that this is a welcome to Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Welcome to the NFL. I think that the Chiefs break out on this one as Mahomes has a good game. Just expect maybe Clyde Edwards-Helaire to not only rack up some on the ground, but also in the air. I think he could round up finishing within the 25-point, 37-point realm. If you play your cards right, I know it's a little crazy, but you know what? I'm all excited about this game, this season. And, hey, we all know how it is in fantasy. It could just be as crazy as that with what you thought you know, but it turns out to be the other. We got so many more to come today on HTF Bets. Coming up next, we're going to dive into week 1 of the NFL season. Our Sunday starts and sits, breakout players, and many more. Stay tuned. HTF Bets. We'll be right back.
I have a very special guest, Mr. Mike Golic Jr. Let me tell you, this is one of the nicest guys I have met so far in this industry. So thank you so much for coming and talking to me. I really appreciate it.
Hey, listen, smart move. I am not immune to flattery, so buttering me up on the way in is the absolute right way to do this. You're learning already.
That was the goal. I had it in my notes.
Welcome back to HTF Bets. As we mentioned in the last segment, tonight is the leadoff to NFL football, first game of the season, Chiefs at Texans. While we dove into that, now we're going to dive into the rest of the week 1 slate, specifically focusing on fantasy football. We're going to tell you now who our best matchups and our worst matchups are. I'm going to start with you, Robert. Who is the best fantasy matchup for week 1? Matchup.
Travis Kelce. I think with what we said in the last segment about the defenses of both the Chiefs and the Texans, Travis Kelce is going to get a lot of yardage in this game. And we know in high-profile matches, and this is a high-profile match, we know how dominant he can be and how many points he can put up. So I would say if anybody has Travis Kelce as their starting tight end, I think this is a really good matchup because he is going against a defense that's not the best, not bad, but they're not going to have an easy time guarding Travis Kelce. And I think Travis Kelce is going to have a really big game, especially with Mahomes, likely going in the air for most of the game. So this is a matchup where I really like Travis Kelce putting up a lot of points for my team.
Good points. Travis Kelce is absolutely a monster at the tight end position. We know he's going to get his. Okelo, one player from week 1, best matchup. Who is it?
Oh, man, it's so tough for me to choose, but I'm going to go at the quarterback position, and in a shocker, I'm going to say Jimmy Garoppolo. He has one of the best matchups based on last year's total. I mean, the Cardinals allowed an average of 22 fantasy points per game to quarterbacks. I know the 49ers are more of a run-based football team. It's a dicey matchup because Jimmy could maybe throw 74 yards or 110 yards. But last year, Jimmy did throw for over 741 yards and 8 touchdowns in both matchups against the Cardinals last season. I mean, I would love to stack it up this week with him, George Kittle, Raheem Mostert, who I have in one of my leagues of record. If you're looking for a quarterback this week to give you an absolute boom in fantasy points, I expect Jimmy Garoppolo to be that quarterback. I expect him more or less as well to be in the top 5 when it's all said and done in week 1.
I think top 5, I think, is a little bit of a stretch. I think that's a stretch for Jimmy Garoppolo. I can definitely see him being in the top 10 because of that matchup. Another guy who I think is a borderline top 10 running back every week, but I think this week he's one of the best plays you're going to find in fantasy is a running back, Josh Jacobs. He's facing the Carolina Panthers, and the fact of the matter is the Carolina Panthers do not have a good defense. They don't have a good roster. They gave up the 4th most rushing yards in the NFL last year and the 1st most rushing touchdowns with a whopping 31. That is 9 more than the second worst team in that category. So I think you add that all up, and also Luke Kuechly retired from football. Jerry McCoy moved on in free agency. They brought in Derek Brown through the draft, and Yator Gross-Mato there on the end. So you have two rookies on that defensive line with Brian Birds and K'Wan Short. And then add also into the fact that the Raiders, the interior offensive line with Incognito, Rodney Hudson, Gabe Jackson, I think they're gonna plow right through that defensive line of Carolina. And I think when it's all said and done, Josh Jacobs should comfortably have over 100 yards and a touchdown or two. So that's me. We're gonna switch now though to our worst matchup of the week. And Robert, who has the worst matchup of any player this week?
I'm gonna go Odell Beckham Jr. They're going up against Baltimore this weekend, and Odell and the Cleveland Browns were real bad last year. And I put a lot of money on them to be a good team and a playoff team last year, and they were not. They should have a better offensive line this year, which should help a bit. But I'm still not sold on this team being a threat with as many options as they do have. So I'm going to say anybody on that Cleveland offense, I'd be shaky of, especially in a really tough team like the Baltimore Ravens. Baltimore does have a great defense and a great secondary, and it's going to be a tough matchup for Odell Beckham. I think it's going to be tough for anybody on that Cleveland offense, and there's a reason why the Ravens are so heavily favored in this matchup. And I'm going to say, I see Okelo shaking his head. I know he loves Odell Beckham, but I got to go Odell Beckham.
I got him on my team.
Can't.
And look, last year, I'm just saying, we all thought that the Ravens would sweep the Browns. The Browns wound up getting a game against them. And ironically, it was in Baltimore where Nick Chubb, who, God bless his soul, I benched him that week because I was scared of the Ravens. I'm not taking that chance anymore. You bet on the Browns. You ride or you die. Kevin Stefanski knows what he's doing. I'm telling you, for any fantasy owners, don't listen to Robert. Remember, drink some of your Okelo-holic. I'm telling you, Odell Beckham is going to give you points. I guarantee.
Well, once again, Okelo is off his rocker clearly. He's saying with a straight face to trust the Browns. And I'm not trusting the Browns for anything, but I'm telling you who I'm really not trusting this week, and you should absolutely not start in any format, is Kirk Cousins. Kirk Cousins, you may be tempted to start him sometimes, but don't do it because he's facing the Green Bay Packers. And for context, Kirk Cousins had his worst two games last year against the Green Bay Packers. He completed 43% and 51% of his passes respectively, and his QBR his passer rating was 52 and 58 respectively in both games against the Packers. By far his worst games of the year last year. I expect the same thing to happen this year, especially with Stephon Diggs not there. I think Jair Alexander can take Adam Thielen out of the game, force B.C. Johnson and Justin Jefferson and Irv Smith and Kyle Rudolph to beat you, and I don't think they're going to. So I think
no, Nick, this ain't Monday night, though. This ain't Monday night at U.S. Bank Stadium. This ain't at Lambeau Field. This is week one, clear as day, beautiful day. There ain't no skull chance, but I'm telling you this, Kirk Cousins can still finish within the top 15 in fantasy points and quarterbacks. Remember, this ain't Monday night Kirk Cousins, okay? I promise you that. I promise y'all.
Well, it's Kirk Cousins versus the Packers, and everything I just told you is the facts. And I'm telling you, Kirk Cousins is not someone you want to play this week. But again, that's just me. But I'll get my dig in on you there, Okelo. But I'll go to you now, Okelo. Who's a start candidate for you this week?
A start candidate. Ooh, that is tough. But before I do that, I'll quickly, Nick, because you forgot me a little bit with a fantasy player I'm not trusting this week. I ain't trusting Le'Veon Bell. I mean, Robert talks about not trusting any of the Browns. I don't trust any of the Jets, and I don't trust Le'Veon Bell. He was an absolute bust last year, a huge disappointment. He's not a guy that I'm really going to be favorable as much this year because I don't know what the heck Adam Gase is doing in the offense. So just real quick, Le'Veon Bell, don't touch him, especially against that top 10 Bills defense. But I'll tell you this, one player who is a must start for me this week, DK Metcalf. He is a guy that I feel that is going to be off the wall this year. And besides, I think that this matchup against the Falcons, I mean, you couldn't select any other matchup to be just as good. DK Metcalf can finish not only in the top 10, but he can finish within the top 3. This secondary is bad. They don't have Desmond Trufant. You have rookie A.J. Terrell, who could be lined up against them. And despite they're going to go into Raheem Morris as their defensive coordinator, he's known to check receivers pretty well in his defensive scheme. But I mean, this Seahawks offense is too dangerous enough not to start. I think DK Metcalf is going to get you some big time fantasy points this week if you start him.
Yeah, okay, well, I'm telling you, I think DK Metcalf has a big opportunity to be impactful against a Falcons secondary that's not very good. But Robert, who do you think is must start this week in fantasy?
Well, I think it's got to be Christian McCaffrey. I think he's in a lot of drafts. He's the number one overall pick. He's on my team. He's going to get a lot of points this season. They're playing up against the Raiders this week. The Raiders do not have a great defense, and I expect Christian McCaffrey. He's the standout guy on that Carolina team. We don't know what Teddy Bridgewater is going to do this year. We don't know what Robbie Anderson's going to do this year. So I think Christian McCaffrey is like death in taxes. He's guaranteed. He's going to put up a ton of points. And against a weaker defense like the Raiders, I really think Christian McCaffrey is going to put up a lot of points. So if he is in your team, if you were lucky enough to get him first or somehow second overall, this is the guy you start week in, week out. No question about it. It's the obvious pick. But for week one, this is your must starter. He's going to get you points. He's going to make or break a lot of fantasy teams. So it's the obvious pick. But yeah, I think Christian McCaffrey's that guy.
He is obvious, Robert, but I'll one-up you again. Don't mean no disrespect, but I mean, if we talking Vikings-Packers, just watch out for Aaron Jones this week. The two matchups he had last year against the Vikings, he finished within the top 3 in terms of fantasy running backs. This Packers offense loves to run heavy, so I'm just saying, fantasy owners, you got Aaron Jones, you got yourself a gangbuster this year.
Yeah, I'm gonna pick one a little off the cuff. This is kind of this will tie into my breakout player of the week, really, and I think it's Henry Ruggs. Henry Ruggs, and if you haven't caught on yet, I'm very high on the Raiders this week because of the matchups. I think they all have great matchups against Carolina. But listen, John Gruden is putting a lot of faith in Henry Ruggs. He's number 1 on the depth chart to start the season, number 1, and Brian Edwards is number 2. I mean, John Gruden doesn't usually mess around with rookies like this, but he has enough faith in them to be number 1 and number 2 on the depth chart. And Henry Ruggs is going to be going up against Dante Jackson. I think that's going to be a very intriguing matchup. But somebody's got to catch passes for the Raiders in this game, and I think Henry Ruggs is absolutely in a great spot to break out this week and really announce his leaning to the NFL as Okelo thinks that Clyde Edwards-Helaire will. So I definitely think look out for him. Okelo, who do you think is going to break out this week?
Ooh, for breakout, I'm going to stick to the position that I love most, and that is the quarterback position. And I'm going to go with a guy who you can count on week 1, any day of the week, especially this matchup, Carson Wentz. Last year when he played Washington in week 1, he wound up finishing in the top 3 in terms of fantasy quarterbacks. Now, Carson Wentz is a guy that last year I put a lot of faith in, and he let me down a lot of weeks, but I think this is going to be a matchup that I can easily trust no matter what. I think he can break out. This is the game that really starts for Carson Wentz. And one more player I'm going to go with, Nick, and you'll definitely love this, Darren Waller. I think that this matchup against the Panthers gave up the 5th most fantasy points to tight ends last year. And I think that, like you said, this is a game where you can start every Raider, even Derek Carr. I think Darren Waller could finish up number 1 this week in terms of fantasy points for tight ends. So if you have Darren Waller on your roster and Carson Wentz, your team is going to be set up for sweet, sweet victory.
Yeah, absolutely. And Wentz was going to be my number 2 must start this week because he's going against Washington. There are a lot of uncertainty. I think the defense is actually one of their brighter spots on their team, but I still think Carson Wentz, I believe in his talent. I believe that he can get back to that MVP form, and I think it starts with this year and in game 1 against Washington. But Robert, who's breaking out this week in fantasy? Who do you have doing that?
You know what? I'm going to go a little bit off the cuff here as well. I'm going to go James White for the New England Patriots. I like James White a lot. I've always liked James White. I think as far as a running back goes, he's not the most explosive guy, but he's the most reliable guy you're going to get. And there's a reason why he's been in that Patriots backfield for so long. He is a really consistent, really reliable running back. So if you have, if you went wide receiver, tight end, or quarterback all before filling out your running back position and you were getting into the lower rounds of taking a running back, I think James White for a lot of teams is either going to be your starting running back or your backup running back. And so he can give it a chance to get those points. Going up against the Miami Dolphins this week, the Dolphins are either going to be really bad this year or they're going to be average. I don't see them being a playoff team, but that division is wide open. And so as unreliable, I think, as the Patriots offense is, James White is the one guy that you can really rely on to get you points. I think a lot of people might say, oh, well, Cam Newton might have a chance. I don't know. I wouldn't trust Cam just yet. I wouldn't trust Julian Edelman. I wouldn't trust a lot of guys on that offense. James White, though, he's a guy you can take, and I think he can have a big game against Miami here. I think he can get a lot of yardage against a team that really is, a lot of new faces on defense, and really we don't know what the Dolphins are this year. So he can really pick up a lot of yardage.
Are you sure about that, Robert? I mean, you do have Sony Michel. I know he's still coming off a minor bit of an injury, but that Patriots
I don't think he wins it out over. I don't think he wins it out over White. I don't think they see it with him yet.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how the Patriots backfield plays out, but James White definitely PPR, catching passes, has a lot of value there, even with Cam Newton at the quarterback helm. But stay tuned with us when we come back after the break, because we will be breaking down Sunday Night Football, Cowboys versus Rams, as well as Bucks versus Saints, and the best games that we have Week 1 slate. Stay tuned on the other side of the break.
Welcome back, HTF family. We are back here at HTF Bets. For our third segment, we're going to be previewing some of the games on opening weekend here. First matchup we're going to go with is Dallas at Los Angeles. That'd be the Los Angeles Rams opening their brand new stadium in Inglewood. Of course, SoFi Stadium getting to host its first game. No fans this year, which kind of hurts a lot, especially because, you want to see those new fans in, a new building like that. So I think it is going to be a little bit sad for an opening ceremony, but it is a great matchup. And so I'm going to go to you, Nick, first. In this matchup, who do you favor? The Dallas Cowboys are the favorite coming into this matchup, and I think it's a pretty close matchup, even though they are the favorite. What do you see coming out of this game? Who do you favor in this matchup?
Yeah, the betting lines have Dallas as a 3-point favorite. I'm a little surprised by that, especially on the road. I know that, the fact that the crowd, it's not going to be a crowd. Like, I understand you take that out of it, but still, I think playing and it's going to be a brand new stadium. I think the guys are going to be jacked up for the Rams, and I like the Rams a lot this year. So I think I'm favoring the Rams in this one. I'm really intrigued to see what goes on with the running back situation. Obviously, the Todd Gurley era came to an end last year, and they drafted Cam Akers to take that spot. I'm interested to see if Sean McVay goes back to running the ball a lot like he did with Gurley in 2018, which worked to success. They didn't have quite the running game last year, and I thought that's why Jared Goff had down years and that the Rams kind of limped to a 9-7 record, which, given all the talk about the Rams last year, I say limp to a 9-7 record because it felt like everybody was talking bad about them. But in reality, one game out of a wild card spot, I expect them to get to the playoffs this year. And then for Dallas, it's all going to be on Dak Prescott's shoulders. I think it always is. We all know what Zeke's going to give you, but I think every week we're kind of seeing which Dak are we going to get. He's known for starting out hot, though, when the season starts, so I expect him to do that this year. But it's going to be – I'm keeping my eyes on Amari Cooper versus Jalen Ramsey. Jalen Ramsey got paid today, highest paid cornerback in the NFL. I don't know why Okelo is doing that. He's a top 5 cornerback in the league. Amari Cooper has been known to shut down in road games. And so I think that's going to be a big emphasis for Dallas. If he doesn't step up, then I think the Rams are going to walk away with this one.
All good points. I'm happy to hear you at least give some confidence to the Rams, because all I've seen this whole offseason from the Rams' perspective is just negativity. And obviously you mentioned, the offensive line and stuff like that. I think that is a really big concern for the Rams. It's not a concern for the Cowboys. The Cowboys consistently have a top 5 offensive line in the NFL year in and year out. So, you did bring up the matchup between Jalen Ramsey and Amari Cooper. Now, Amari Cooper in years past has typically gotten the better of Jalen Ramsey in these matchups. But I expect Jalen Ramsey to come into this season with a lot of confidence. This is his, this is his contract year. He got paid. Now it's time for him to show why he's worth it. Okelo, I know you're not huge on Jalen Ramsey. What do you see coming out of this matchup between Ramsey and Amari Cooper? Is Amari Cooper going to feast, or is Jalen Ramsey going to shut him down?
I was just looking back at last year's game when the Cowboys absolutely blew out the brakes off the Rams in Jerry's world. And, to give Nick's credit, what, I couldn't be doing my yawning as much because to his credit, Jalen Ramsey did shut down Amari Cooper. He was held to 1 catch for 19 yards. That's not a day that, you would expect out of Amari Cooper. I hope that's not the case. I expect Amari Cooper to get in the end zone and at least have around 70 yards a game. And look, I've said a lot about Jalen Ramsey to you guys as well as to a lot of places I've been on. He can't cover a nosebleed. Now, it's only one game he's hot, one game he's cold. To me, is he a top 5 corner? Absolutely the heck no. I still think Marcus Peters should have never left the Rams. He's a way better corner, in my opinion, than Jalen Ramsey. I know you're shaking your head, Robert, but I'm just saying Marcus Peters is known for getting interceptions returned to the house, and he's going to do that especially for Baltimore.
Okay.
But sticking with the Cowboys-Rams game, everybody knows I'm an anti-Cowboy guy. I think that the Rams are going to be able to open up their brand new, wonderful stadium that is just as magical as Jerry's World, very up. And I can't wait for the Cowboys to come back to Club Pena and get a fresh hot ale in the building. So I look for them. I look for Jared Goff to especially favor Tyler Higbee. They got to feed the ball. Now, it is a two-headed backfield. You have Daryl Richardson as well as the fact of Cam Akers, who I think is going to be an absolute stud this year if Sean McVay gets back to that winning formula. I think Jared Goff starts off well. It's going to be a high-scoring game, but just don't expect the Rams to get blown out. I think this is a newly confident Rams team in these brand new, kind of okay, cool, gradient-looking uniforms, but I expect the Rams to come out hot. I think it's going to be at least a 3-point game. I think the Rams, though, still come out on top and christen their new stadium with a W.
Well, again, I hope so. I mean, this is one of the more interesting matchups, I think, because we really don't know what's going on. Again, without preseason, it's hard to tell where these teams stand. I think a lot of it's going to depend on the Rams' offensive line. That's a no-brainer. Last year, it was one of the worst in the NFL. And for a team that spends as much money as the Rams do, as much talent as the Rams have, you cannot afford to have that bad of an offensive line. And they didn't really bring anybody in that's new to improve the offensive line. So they're really riding a lot of guys coming back from injury and riding, guys like Andrew Whitworth who, are getting older and older. They're really riding these guys hoping that they're going to show up. So I think the Cowboys win that matchup, and just in terms that you can trust that offensive line. You mentioned the three-headed monster that Sean McVay alluded to in the backfield. Is Cam Akers going to be number one? I think by season's end he will be. But right now it seems like it's going to be Malcolm Brown, Darrell Henderson, and Cam Akers as like a three-headed monster, as Sean McVay said. So the run game is going to be very interesting as well. Then you got Cooper Kupp. You got, Tyler Higbee. You have Robert Woods. I like the Rams offense a lot. But I also like the Cowboys offense. Michael Gallup is really good. Amari Cooper, is coming off a big season. So I think this is one of the closer matchups. I think the Rams will pull out of this as the underdog. I would bet on the Rams. I think a lot of people are really underrating the Rams this year, given how much of a slaughter that NFC West is this season. But I'm gonna ride with the two of you, and I'm gonna say the Rams pull this one out at home and get their first win in their new stadium. And Jalen Ramsey is going to prove he's a top 2 cornerback. Not
in the famous words of Chad Johnson, child, please. Child, please. I'm telling you, Amari Cooper, Michael Gallup, or whoever Jalen Ramsey's cover is going to kiss the baby, and you can bet on that.
It's going to be Amari Cooper.
For sure.
So we're gonna move on out of that matchup with that being decided, and we're going to move into the Packers. And the Packers are making their way to Minnesota for another divisional matchup. And they are taking on their arch nemesis, you can consider the Bears, but more recent history, it's Minnesota. And Minnesota is the favorite in this matchup. They're at home. Nick, what do you see out of this Minnesota team? Obviously, they lost Stephon Diggs. That's a huge loss for Kirk Cousins. Do you expect a big game out of Kirk Cousins? I know you said, don't bet on Kirk in this, but what do you see coming out of here? Do you think Minnesota deserves to be the favorite here, or do you think Green Bay can pull out an upset at US Bank?
I got the Packers coming out with an upset. And it's because of Kirk Cousins. He doesn't play well against Green Bay. He doesn't play well in big games, and it's no different. I don't think it's going to be any different here on Sunday. I don't care that they're at home. I think the Packers are going to steamroll them, to be honest with you. I think Aaron Rodgers, we're going to see a different Aaron Rodgers. Last year, very conservative with the ball, a lot of checkdowns, a lot of slants, a lot of short passes, wasn't really pushing the ball down the field like he usually has. I think he kind of recognizes that if the Packers are going to get to that next level, and that's saying a lot because they got to the conference championship game last year, but I think we all would agree it was almost a fluke. They kind of got there accidentally, and they were not a Super Bowl caliber team. If they're going to be a Super Bowl caliber team, Aaron Rodgers has got to show up to field with the incredible arm talent that he is. He's got a lot to prove. They're going to have to keep Devontae Adams healthy. But when it comes to the Vikings, Kirk Cousins just bogs a lot down for me. But I think Dalvin Cook's going to have a big game because conversely, in the one game against the Packers last year, Dalvin Cook had a very big game. So I think he's going to do him, but I think Rodgers is going to start shredding through this Viking secondary that I'm a little hesitant about outside of Harrison Smith.
Yeah, I hope we see an angry Aaron Rodgers this year. I think that's much needed, especially after they drafted Jordan Love in the first round. I think Aaron Rodgers, expected them to go wide receiver. They didn't. So I hope he's playing really angry this year because I think we can get to see great things out of him when he plays angry. So Okelo, with this matchup, obviously we talk about Kirk Cousins. I saw you looking at Nick a little funny there when he mentioned Kirk Cousins is not the most reliable guy. And that's fair, but what do you see coming out of this game? Do you think obviously Aaron Rodgers is typically the favored quarterback in this matchup? Do you see Kirk Cousins having a big game here, or is he going to have another just not a very good start against a Packers team and against a division rival?
Since Kirk Cousins has been the starter for the Minnesota Vikings, signing that big contract that he did a couple years ago, he's been 2-0 in regular season openers in week 1. Both games been at US Bank Stadium. Sad part is you ain't going to have Skull Nation behind you. There's a lot of factors, of course, no Stephon Diggs, and as well as the fact of that defensive secondary. They don't got Xavier Rhodes anymore, but he kind of had a downward, kind of a spiral. Other than Harrison Smith, it's really who can you trust. But when I look at that Vikings front, you got Yannick Ngakoue to replace Everson Griffin to tag team with Danielle Hunter. You have Anthony Barr still playing in that 3-4 scheme. You have Eric Kendricks, one of the best coverage linebackers in the NFL. You gotta at least give Minnesota some credit here. This defense is one of the top 5 defenses, finished in the top five last season. And I don't understand where all this doubt is coming from when you have an elite defense. And last year, the Vikings, forbidding Dalvin Cook was healthy, would have won that Monday night game, would have been the NFC North champions, and would have had that first round bye. The playoffs would have been so different last year. I think personally, Kirk Cousins, stud in week 1. You can count on Captain Kirk to deliver in the clutch. And like I said, Nick, this ain't Monday Night Football. This ain't no primetime game where Kirk Cousins wets the bed like a 2-year-old baby. I'm telling you all right now, you have to bet on Kirk Cousins. I know the matchup may seem a little scary because let's not disagree now. The Packers have a strong defense. They got Zadarius Smith, one of the leading sack leaders last year. I think, though, Minnesota pulls it out. Mike Zimmer knows what he's doing. It's going to be a new change now because they have a new offensive coordinator, but the Vikings know what wins them football games. Give the ball to Dalvin Cook. Throw it when you need to. They don't know Justin Jefferson. They don't know the speed and the type of elusiveness that he possesses. You still have Kyle Rudolph out there, Adam Thielen, Irv Smith as a other option. This Vikings offense has a plethora of talent that can expose that that Packers defense. They just need to play their way, and I'm telling you all right now, you can expect Captain Kirk to deliver in the clutch. I guarantee.
Okelo guarantee. You can't bet against it. But, I'm going to agree with Okelo here, actually. I have Minnesota in this matchup. I think they're the favorite for a reason. That defense is real good. And, I think the defense really can shut down the Packers. Yes, it is going to come down to quarterback duels. If you let Aaron Rodgers have his way, he can beat this Minnesota defense. But, it does ride on Kirk Cousins a lot. But he doesn't need to be big game Kirk in this game 1 matchup. I don't think he needs to be. There's not a lot of pressure right now. Yes, you're opening up against a division rival. Yes, you're opening up at home. But it's being a week 1 game. Everybody's coming into the season on the same playing field. Nobody's had a preseason. It's been minor training camp. It's been the theme this whole show, what we've been talking about. So I think that Minnesota is going to get the better of Green Bay here. I think this Minnesota team's really strong. I still like the offense even without Stephon Diggs. I think Dalvin Cook and Adam Thielen and Kyle Rudolph, I think they're good enough to carry that offense still. Yes, it depends a lot on your quarterback. I think Kirk Cousins gets a lot of unnecessary hate. He does perform.
Thank you.
It's because of the contract. If he wasn't getting paid as much as he was, there'd be a lot less pressure on him. But because there's so much pressure on him because of that contract, he is going to be held to regard as a top 5 quarterback. And, Is he a top 5 quarterback? No, I think he's top 10. But, I think this is where he needs to prove that, he can get the season off on the right foot and Minnesota can, push forward as one of these dominant teams that start from their defense. But with that being said, we're going to go to a little bit more of an unsure matchup, I'm going to say. The New Orleans Saints are the favorite in their game against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And the Buccaneers are going to the Superdome. Of course, just like the Chiefs we talked about earlier, the Saints are not going to have a home crowd, so you're not going to have the Superdome and the loudness and the intimidation that stadium brings. So, Nick, you're a Tampa Bay guy. Should we believe the hype on this Buccaneers team? They're the underdog in this matchup. This is set to be, at least on paper, one of the bigger rivalries in the NFL this year because they are going to be competing for the division title. New Orleans Saints are still division favorites. But do we see the Buccaneers upsetting them here in week 1, or are we seeing the Saints holding up as the favorite here?
Well, they can do it because they've shown they can do it before with Jameis Winston and Ryan Fitzpatrick, actually. 2 years ago, they walked right into the Superdome, crowd and all, with Ryan Fitzpatrick at the helm, and they put up 48 points in a week 1 win. Now they have Tom Brady, Rob Gronkowski, Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, Ronald Jones. I can keep going because I'm not done with all the weapons that we have right now.
Keep them coming. Keep them coming.
As a Bucs fan, man, I mean, this is, Bucs fans have been through we've been through it 13 years, not a single playoff appearance. It is time to get it off our backs, and Tom Brady is the guy to lead us there. But this is week 1. I have my reservations because I'm very interested to see how Tom Brady is going to look week 1. I'm really interested to see how Gronk's going to look. I think Gronk, his conditioning hasn't been up to snuff so far in training camp, according to himself and Bruce Arians. So the heat was kind of kicking his butt a little bit. He gets a break because he's going to be inside this dome. So I expect Tom to lean a lot on Gronkowski here because that's the one target that, it's bread and butter. He knows what he's doing with Rob Gronkowski. Mike Evans right now is questionable to play with a hamstring injury, and I think that's something to monitor. Bruce Arians said yesterday that he's day-to-day right now, and they're just kind of seeing how it goes. So we'll see if Mike Evans plays, but I expect he'll be in there, and he has a history of torching Marshawn Lattimore, and I think it'll be no different on Sunday if he plays, the hamstring holds up. But then again, if he's not playing well, that's why you have Chris Godwin. That's why you have Gronk. That's why you have O.J. Howard. There's just so many plethora of weapons here for Tampa, and it's like the first time as a Bucs fan, I'm believing the hype a little bit, and I just hope I don't get burned on it. But they can beat the Saints. They've done it many times before. They're able to steal games for the Saints. I think they're going to compete very hard, but they're going to get the best out of Drew Brees. Drew Brees opens the season always red hot, and I think I expect nothing different from them. But this is going to be a great quarterback matchup. This is 2 of the all-time greats right here going at it week 1. I'm ready for it, and I'm going to maybe a little biasy here, but I'm going to go with the Bucs. I think they're going to get it done, make a statement week 1. I believe in them, so I'm going with the Bucs, and I feel good about it.
Yeah, Okelo, what do you think about that? Do you agree with Nick there? Do you think they're going to get an upset here? Obviously we have a battle between 2 future Hall of Famers, certainly 2 of the oldest quarterbacks in the NFL at this point. What do we see coming out of these 2 guys? Do we see Tom Brady and the Buccaneers getting off on the right foot with their brand new team, or do we see New Orleans and Drew Brees shutting it down?
I never, ever, ever thought at some point in my life that I would be saying this, but I'm betting on Tom Brady, and I need to maybe buy a Buccaneers jersey to go along with it to replace the old Cadillac Williams jersey that I had from 3rd grade. But I will say this. I mean, this is a matchup that you can't deny. You cannot deny how awesome that this matchup is. And, I mean, these are 2 quarterbacks who have a history of balling out in week 1. And I know Nick is a little concerned about Gronk, but may I remind you the last time he came into the Superdome, 6 receptions, 116 yards, and a touchdown. Tom Brady threw over for 400 yards. This is going to be an air raid duel. Like I said, this is one of these matchups in week 1 where if you love offense and you love stats, this is going to be the game. These 2 defenses, they kind of have a lot of question marks, but they do have a history of showing bend but don't break. I love this matchup overall. Again, you have to factor in. You don't have to deal with the noise of the Superdome unless maybe you automate it in and become Atlanta Falcons. How you doing? But I will say that this is the best team Tom Brady has had in a long, long time. And I ain't talking back from when he had Wes Welker and Randy Moss. This has to be the best team so many weapons, so much talent. I'm expecting this game to be a high-scoring game. And like Nick said, the Buccaneers have a history of coming into the Superdome and planning to shock the world. I see this to be no different. This is going to be a battle of who wins the NFC South this year. This ain't going to be easy, especially if you have the Bucs or Saints defense on your fantasy team. Don't play them at all, please. Enjoy the game for what it was. Grab as many as you can. Enjoy your family. Get your popcorn ready and get ready to enjoy the master of, at the end of the day, who wounds up being the NFL's all-time leading passer, which I hate to say it again, but it's going to be Tom Terrific.
Yeah.
Real quick, Robert. I just want to say another big thing, another match I didn't get to touch on here. It's really big, I think, for both teams. Tristan Wirfs, he's going to get the start at right tackle. He's going to be against Cameron Jordan, who has feasted off the Bucs in his career. You're going to get the rookie right tackle against Cameron Jordan right away. I think that's going to be very important. I'm so happy that's not Tom's blind side. So, I mean, he'll see it coming at least, and hopefully he can get the ball out quick. And then conversely, on the other side, Ryan Ramczyk, he may be the best right tackle in the business. Well, he's going up against the sack artist leader of last year, Shaq Barrett. So I think those are two great matchups to keep an eye on as well and could dictate how this game goes as well.
Yeah,
Tristan Wirfs
absolutely.
better up his diet. I'll say that. If you guys have been seeing what he's been eating on Instagram, he's going to need a lot more fuel intake to take care of Cameron Jordan. That's for sure.
Yeah, and obviously there's a lot riding on the Buccaneers offensive line this year that's going to make or break this team. You can't let them get into a 43 now, Tom Brady? You can't let them get into him on every play. So absolutely love those points. I think you know what? Don't bet against Tom. I agree there. I think I'm going to go on the underdog here. I think I'd bet on Tom. I think they can get the upset here in New Orleans. It's definitely going to help not having a crowd at the Superdome to play against. So right before we had the segment, we're going to do this real quick. Nick, I'm going to go to you first. Arizona's playing San Francisco in San Francisco this weekend. San Francisco's opening up as a favorite. Obviously, San Francisco's coming off a fresh Super Bowl loss. San Francisco, are they going to beat this Arizona team, yes or no? Who are you betting on?
If I had a bet, I'm going to go with San Francisco because I think it's a safe pick, very safe pick to go with the defending Super Bowl runner-up. But I think Kyler Murray in Arizona is not to be – I don't think it's going to be a blowout. The 2 games last year, Kyler Murray actually played pretty well against the San Francisco defense. He's got a year under him now. I expect some improvement. He's got Hopkins now, along with Christian Kirk there on that offense. So I'm interested to see there and Kenyon Drake as well. But I think the 49ers have enough to win this game.
Okelo, what about you? Who are you picking in this game?
I'm going to go for the upset. Like Nick said, the Cardinals came so close the last couple years. I expect this again to be another showcase of a kind of a good quarterback rivalry in terms of Jimmy Garoppolo and Kyler Murray. I think that last experience for the Cardinals will give them the experience to beat them this time. Richard Sherman has to deal with DeAndre Hopkins, and that's not an easy task for any corner to deal with. And the plethora of talents that Kyler Murray has and Kenyon Drake in the football, this is going to be a fun show. I hope the air raid finally shows me something of question to my concerns, but Kyler Murray balled out in week 1 last year. I expect the trend to continue. I want him to get his first dub of the year of this brand new Cardinals team. I expect this to be, hopefully, I'm going to go a little spoiler here, a 10-point Arizona Cardinal victory on Sunday on the road in San Francisco to get Cliff Kingsbury and this team red hot for the 2020 season.
Fair enough. Well, as much as I'd like to believe Arizona's going to defeat the 49ers, I think I have to bet on the 49ers here. For me personally, in my fandom, I hope the 49ers lose. But, obviously it's a tough team to bet against. And with that defense, they can shut down a high-powered offense like the Arizona Cardinals. Right now, all we have to base off this Arizona Cardinals offense is, on paper. We don't know what they're going to look like. Obviously, on paper, it's a lot like the Browns last year. They're stacked. They got Kenyon Drake. They got DeAndre Hopkins. Obviously, Kyler Murray's coming off Offensive Rookie of the Year. It's a really, really nice offense. I don't know about the defense. I don't know how much I'm going to trust that defense. Obviously, the 49ers are good on offense as well, so it's definitely going to be a great matchup. I think I'm going to have to bet the favorite here, though. I think the 49ers are going to pull it out.
Super Bowl hangover beware. We all know what happens to teams after they get that Super Bowl loss, how kind of tough it is to get that motor running again. I mean, it was the same a little bit with the Rams last year. So I'm just saying, just be a little shaky, okay? Be a little shaky on that one.
I'd be happy to. So with that being said, we're going to come back for our 4th and final segment. Stick with us. and we'll be right back.
How has a failure or apparent failure set you up for a future success? And do you maybe have a favorite failure of yours?
I think there was a time in my life where I was living in Germany. I'd lived in Germany for a year. You might have read that in the article, actually. And I remember coming back from Germany and having the goal in mind to like work in baseball, but really being completely resigned that there's no way I could possibly make it happen. I just didn't have, the technical coding know-how to be like a numbers cruncher in a front office. I didn't really have like any connections in the industry to speak of. And so I just felt like completely dejected. And, I had this YouTube channel that had 800 subscribers. And the first time I made a baseball bits, which is, like you said, the flagship series, I probably got like 200 views or something like that. But then I kept making them. And I think by the time I got to the third one, it just blew up. And then that's kind of where I got to where I am now.
Welcome back, HTF fanatics and HTF bet fans all around. We are coming now to the conclusion of today's episode. And, well, we want to get your week started off right, get you yours, and get you started off, at least hopefully for this sports football season, off hot. So it's time to make our bet of the week. And I'll tell you this as a preview spoiler. If you bet with me this week, you're going to win a lot, even as much as the Florida lottery. So I know Nick might be a little crazy with me right now, but Nick, I want to start off with you, man. Me and you have been arguing a little back and forth, but let me hear your bet of the week, man. Let me see what you got in terms of the games, as well as just maybe any players you got. What's your bet of the week this week, my guy?
To me, this is the easiest bet of the week, and we touched on it in the last segment, but the official over-under for Tampa and New Orleans is 49.5. I'm telling you right now, they're going to blast right through that. They're going to blast right through that. Two high-powered offense, two division rivals. I think both offenses are going to come out red hot, and I think a 50-point set like that, I mean, they should go right through that. Historically, these two teams have always gone over that, and I think week one will be no different. So if you're betting on the Tampa Bay and New Orleans game, I think that's a very easy bet to get you started off with for the weekend.
All right, Nick, I'm definitely liking that. Robert, how are we feeling? How are we feeling about giving a little lucky HTF bet fanatic a little good luck this week? What's your bet of the week?
I'm gonna do Miami and New England. So as much as I said, I'm gonna bet on Miami in that game. So Miami is the underdog coming in that matchup. I expect a little bit of a big thing out of Miami this year. Again, like I alluded to earlier, that division's wide open as far as I'm concerned. With all the players opting out on the New England defense and New England's offense being as bad as it was last year, yes, the offensive line should be better this year since I believe David Andrews is coming back this year. And just the general uncertainty of how Cam Newton is going to fit into Bill Belichick's offense. I really don't know what the New England Patriots are going to look like this year. And I can say that for a bunch of other teams in that division. I don't know what the Jets are going to look like this year, and I don't know what the Dolphins are going to look like this year. But I think the Dolphins are going to be considerably better this year. Now, they named Ryan Fitzpatrick week one starter. He had a great end to the season last year after they started off horribly. They have a better team this year, just flat out, a better defense, a better secondary. I really think Miami can upset New England. Miami typically gets one over on New England every year, at least. So I think Miami, even coming in as a pretty considerable underdog, I think Miami can upset New England, and I think Miami is going to get off to the right foot on week one. So that's who I would bet on this week.
Okay, all right. So we got two hot takes right there in terms of that. You know what's so weird? I've been a high gambler, not only with what we talk about, but also with this show. I'm gonna play a little on the safe side. Now I know HTF bet fans may be a bit surprised, but I'm gonna bet on the safe side, and I'm gonna bet for the Steelers-Giants game for your future AFC North Division champions, your comeback player of the year, Ben Roethlisberger, to get hot. They opened up at least -6 to the Giants. They're coming in as 6-point favorite. I look for week one, Big Ben in the bright lights of the Big Apple to ball out in week one. And the last time, 4 years ago, history lesson, when the Steelers played week one on Monday Night Football, Ben Roethlisberger had a field day. It is on the road. Big Ben does have a bad history on the road, but when it's Monday night under the lights, I'm going to trust that my quarterback, my number 7 is going to give you to trust James Conner, trust Juju Smith-Schuster, and with that absolute monster of a defense, top 5 defense, your future number 1 ranked defense in the land this year, that the Steelers not only take down the Giants, but they obliterate the Giants. You can bet on this week. I'm going to bet, at least for my paycheck at Dick's, with an extra 300, Steelers are going to obliterate the Giants by 25. I guarantee that the Steelers win against the Giants, and expect Ben Roethlisberger to go crazy. So before we wrap up the show, guys, any feedback, comments, questions?
I mean, you're just crazy. That's all I can say.
I'm crazy. See, this is what we wanted. This is what we wanted. But I'm telling you, what's not to love about this Steelers team coming back from the dead this year? They have it, man.
Well, we will see. It's like we said, though, this is going to be a great football season. I can't wait for tonight to get this started.
Tonight starts a lot of fireworks. I know I'm going to be with my mom and sister enjoying the ride. And unfortunately, this ride officially has to stop and come to an end. We thank you all again for tuning into HTF Bets. Tune in next Thursday. We'll recap a little bit of week 1, see how we're feeling going into week 2, and talk the rest with regards to the NBA, NHL playoffs, and as we inch closer to the MLB season. We thank you so much for tuning in, and for all the good folks here at HTF Bets, from Nick, Robert, and myself, thank you again for tuning in, and we hope you have a wonderful Thursday night. And last thing before I go, let's go Steelers!
Wait! Okay, now, from the beginning.